The Senate has now voted in favour of setting up a parliamentary inquiry into the family court system. Despite Labor's objections, those of the Greens as well. Labor did indicate some support yesterday, but was not consulted on the terms of reference, and then was pretty upset at some of the comments that Pauline Hanson, the deputy chair now of this inquiry, has made, that in her view, some women make up complaints of domestic violence and abuse to secure a better outcome in the family court. Anyway, the inquiry will go ahead. The government has the support of One Nation and Centre Alliance to set this up. With me now is Angela Lynch, the CEO of the Women's Legal Service in Queensland. Thanks for your time this afternoon.
Thanks, David.
Is Pauline Hanson right in saying some women make up complaints of domestic violence?
Well, our experience is actually they pretty much underplay the issues of domestic violence. So when women come to us as victims, it often takes a number of interviews with them before they actually develop the trust relationship to actually detail the levels of violence and risk that they suffer.
So most women won't knock on the door, come in and say, I've just had this happen. It takes a while to get that out of them.
Absolutely, yeah, they're ashamed. They're frightened of telling people, and they have trust issues themselves in relation to the professionals that they engage with. So it's not something that they walk in and say easily.
But she says that she's getting cases across her desk every other week of women who have made up complaints. Does that make any sense to you?
No, and I suppose I would be saying where are these issues coming from? What's the source of the information that she's seeking this information from?
Well, now there is going to be a parliamentary inquiry. She will be the deputy chair of it. Mm-hmm. Are you worried about that? Do you think women have anything to fear about this?
Well, I mean, my main concern, we're big enough and able enough ourselves as the Women's Legal Service to go before that inquiry and give our views in relation to a victim's perspective. But I'm actually concerned about victims themselves being concerned about going into an inquiry where they may well feel unsafe, that their integrity is under scrutiny and that they could be cross-examined in a kind of very forthright way about their own stories. I think
Is that what this inquiry is going to be? Is this parliamentary inquiry going to ask for victims to come forward and give evidence, or more like groups like your own?
All inquiries allow the opportunity for individual stories to come forward.
But no one has to come forward.
No one has to come forward. But the reality is we know in relation to these inquiries, the most persuasive testimony and evidence can often be from victims themselves and from people themselves, and we know that.
So do you expect there will be men giving evidence who reckon they've had a raw deal in the family court system, and we'll hear plenty of them, but you're just not sure?
Absolutely.
We're going to hear?
I think that they this inquiry has spoken to them. They have come out in strong support in relation to it, so they definitely will be there. And the concern is that the appropriate level of evidence and testimony from the other side of women in the family law court who have experienced domestic violence isn't going to be there.
Nonetheless, are there problems in the family court system that need to be addressed, need to be looked at least by an inquiry like this?
Well, we've just had the Australian Law Reform Commission that has undertaken an 18-month review. It was said and heralded as the most extensive review of the family law system since the establishment of the court in 1975. We engaged in that in good faith, as did victims of violence. There are 60 recommendations there that haven't been answered. We understand that they may be, we don't really know. And we just sort of, and that was on top of the Henderson review in the last Parliament, and also another Senate inquiry, as well as other inquiries by the Family Law Council.
Do you see any need for this inquiry?
I see no need for this inquiry. This inquiry, there's no need for this inquiry. We need to make decisions now. There are really enormous issues in relation to the family law system and how it responds to domestic violence. Domestic violence is a background issue in 50 to 85% of matters in the family law courts. We need big change, a systems overhaul in many ways, and we have the evidence now.
You don't think this inquiry will help with that system overhaul in terms of the legitimate complaints about speeding up the system, about the costs involved and so on? You don't think this inquiry will help?
Well, I just don't understand why you'd set up this inquiry when we've already just had the Australian Law Reform Commission inquiry, a completely independent body, looking at it and not even set this up before you've even responded to that.
So why do you think the government's done this?
Why do I think? I think that perhaps they were concerns from men's rights and other groups in relation to the recommendation by the Australian Law Reform Commission about the changes in relation to shared parenting. There was a recommendation about that. I think that there's been some fairly strident lobbying that's been going on and that this inquiry is a result of that.
Angela Lynch from the Women's Legal Service in Queensland, I really appreciate your time this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you.